I stared at the divorce papers on my desk, my hands trembling, not with sadness, but with something far colder. A quiet, calculated rage. The words stood out in bold, as if mocking me. Irreconcilable differences. Wife is emotionally incapable and weak, unable to contribute to our future. Weak. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of the sheer absurdity of it. My name is Sophia, and for the past 3 years, I had been building something that even my own husband refused to acknowledge. And in the time it took for Ethan to marry my secretary, I had turned my so-called weakness into a $3 million empire. I leaned back in my chair, my office bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun. Outside my floor-to-ceiling window, the city stretched before me, a silent witness to every late night, every risk, every moment of self-doubt I had fought through. And yet, here I was. Weak? A soft chime from my laptop snapped me back to reality, an email from my legal team. The final signatures were all that remained. I could end this chapter today, walk away with my dignity intact, and leave Ethan to his new life, one he had built on the belief that I was fragile, replaceable. I let out a slow breath, my fingers hovering over the trackpad. A part of me wanted to sign it, to close this ugly chapter and never look back. But another part of me, the part Ethan never bothered to see, wanted to sit with this moment just a little longer. Because this wasn't just about a divorce. This was about a fundamental truth that so many people, men like Ethan, never seemed to understand. Just because someone isn't loud about their power doesn't mean they don't have it. Ethan had always been the charming one. The man who could walk into a room and have everyone eating out of the palm of his hand within minutes. He was sleek, polished, a master storyteller who thrived on perception. He made promises of wealth, of power, of status, and people believed him because he carried himself like a man who deserved to be believed. That was the thing about men like Ethan. They never really did the work. They simply convinced others to believe they had. And me? I was the one behind the scenes, always working, always grinding. My startup, a data-driven market intelligence company, had started as a side project, something I built in the quiet hours between supporting his ambitions. While he networked over expensive dinners, I was writing code. While he chased real estate deals that never quite seemed to pan out, I was forming partnerships that mattered. But Ethan never noticed. Or rather, he never cared to. To him, my work was a hobby. My successes were luck. My exhaustion, a sign of weakness. I glanced down at my phone, my thumb hesitating over a notification from an unknown number. "Hey, Sophia, just wanted to give you a heads up. Ethan and Olivia's wedding announcement just went live. Looks like they're celebrating in Italy. Thought you should know before you see it all over social media." I felt my lips curve, not in a smile, but in something sharper. Olivia, my secretary. I wasn't stupid. I had known for months that something was off. It was in the way she started taking extra long lunch breaks, the way her voice would drop an octave lower whenever Ethan called, the sudden designer handbags and expensive new wardrobe. The signs had been there, and if I had been the woman Ethan thought I was, I would have been blindsided, devastated. But I wasn't that woman. I had seen it all unfold in slow motion, the way you watch a chessboard when you already know the checkmate is inevitable. And instead of stopping it, I had chosen to step back, to let him believe his own delusions. Because while he was planning a wedding, I was closing a deal. $3 million. The number sat on my screen like a quiet testament to everything I had built. A deal that would take my company from a promising startup to a legitimate powerhouse in the industry. A deal I had secured in silence, while Ethan was too busy trading me in for a woman who had no idea the game she was playing. A soft knock at my door. "Sophia?" I looked up to see Rachel, my head of operations, standing in the doorway. Her expression was unreadable, but I knew why she was here. "The investors just sent over the final contract," she said, stepping inside. "Once you sign, it's official. We're scaling internationally. You did it." I did it. I had taken every ounce of pain, every moment of doubt, and turned it into something unstoppable. And the best part? Ethan had no idea. Rachel hesitated, then added, "Are you okay? With everything?" I smiled. A real one this time. Never better. I reached for the pen, the weight of the divorce papers suddenly insignificant. Ethan had thought I was weak, but in the time he spent replacing me, I had built something he could never even dream of. 3 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be sitting in a high-rise corner office, finalizing a $3 million business deal while my ex-husband was off playing house with my secretary, I would have laughed. Not because I didn't believe in myself, but because back then, I was still trapped in the illusion that he believed in me. That was the worst part. Not the betrayal, not the divorce, but the realization that Ethan had never really seen me. I had spent years shrinking myself, making space for his ego, for his dreams, for his endless pursuit of some grand success that always seemed just out of reach. And the whole time, I had been quietly laying the foundation for something real. The warning signs had been there, but I ignored them. I remembered the first time I saw Olivia look at him differently. It was a small thing, a glance that lingered just a second too long, a laugh that felt too personal. At first, I brushed it off. She was young, ambitious, eager to prove herself in the corporate world. I had hired her fresh out of business school, taken her under my wing, shown her the ins and outs of the industry. And Ethan? Well, Ethan was magnetic. People were drawn to him, the way he spoke, the way he carried himself like he already owned the world. So I dismissed the little things. Then came the late nights. Ethan had always been busy, but suddenly, it was different. He stopped checking in. His excuses became thinner. There were secretive phone calls, text messages he would glance at before flipping his phone screen down on the table. I had been working on my company's biggest product launch at the time, running on caffeine and ambition, too distracted by my own goals to focus on the cracks forming in my marriage. And then, one night, I found out. I wasn't looking for proof. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't playing detective. I had simply left my laptop at home, and when I grabbed Ethan's to check my email, I saw it. A single text message from Olivia, lighting up the screen. "I can't wait to be with you. I'm tired of sneaking around." I had stared at it for a long time, not in shock, not in heartbreak, just recognition. Because deep down, I already knew. That night, Ethan came home late, like always. He kissed my forehead, told me he was exhausted, and fell asleep beside me as if nothing had changed. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the text message burned into my mind. And I made a decision. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't confront him. Instead, I poured every ounce of my pain into something that would last longer than any fleeting betrayal. I worked harder. I built smarter. I moved in silence. I stayed. Not because I wanted to save our marriage, but because I wanted time. Time to grow my business. Time to secure my future. Time to make sure that when I finally walked away, it wouldn't be as the woman he thought he left behind. And now, here I was. A $3 million company under my name. A finalized divorce on my desk. And Ethan, thousands of miles away, celebrating his wedding to the woman who thought she had won. Rachel knocked on my office door again, pulling me back to the present. "Sophia, the investors are waiting for the final signature. Do you need a minute?" I exhaled, shaking off the memories. Let's finish this. With one stroke of my pen, I sealed my company's future, and with another, I signed away my past. The pen glided smoothly over the paper, the ink drying faster than the memories of my marriage. And just like that, it was done. 3 years of quiet endurance, of second-guessing myself, of waiting for a love that never truly saw me, all signed away in black and white. Rachel gave me a small nod, picking up the signed documents. "I'll get these sent over to legal." "Congratulations, Sophia." I let out a breath, my fingers pressing into the cool wood of my desk. Congratulations. The word felt strange. Divorce wasn't something people typically celebrated, but this wasn't just the end of a marriage. This was the confirmation that I had made the right choice, the proof that I had been right to bet on myself. As Rachel left, my phone buzzed. Another message. Did you see the wedding photos? Olivia posted them everywhere. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the best of me. I tapped the link, and there they were. Ethan and Olivia, standing in front of a Tuscan villa, the rolling Italian hills behind them. Her dress was expensive, a custom designer piece meant to scream luxury. His smile was wide, his hand resting on the small of her back like it had once rested on mine. The caption read, "Forever with the love of my life. You make me feel stronger than ever." I actually laughed. A quiet, bitter sound, stronger than ever. It was always about that with him. Power, control, image. I closed the photo, setting my phone face down on my desk. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. If anything, I felt free. Let them have their fantasy. Let them believe they had built something real. Because while they were honeymooning in vineyards and toasting to their new life, I was standing on something solid. I had the company. I had the power. I had the future. And best of all, I had the last laugh. A sharp knock at the door broke my thoughts. "Come in." The door swung open, and Liam, my chief financial officer, stepped in with a knowing smile. "I thought you'd want to see this." He slid a document across the desk. I picked it up, scanning the numbers. My breath caught for half a second. Projected valuation, $7.2 million. I glanced up at him. "Is this real?" Liam chuckled. "Very real. We're growing faster than anticipated. The investors are talking about pushing for Series B funding sooner than expected. If we scale internationally, we could be looking at $10 million by next year." $10 million. A number Ethan had never believed I was capable of achieving. I exhaled, a slow smile spreading across my lips. "They underestimated me," I murmured. "They always do," Liam said. "Until it's too late." I tapped my fingers against the desk, staring out at the skyline. For years, I had lived in the shadows of someone else's ambitions. I had played the quiet supporter, the patient wife, the woman who let herself be overlooked. But not anymore. Ethan had thought I was weak, but in the time he was playing house with Olivia, I had built something he could never touch. And for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly who I was. The days following the wedding announcement felt surreal. They were married, living a life that felt more like a fantasy than a reality. Pictures, captions, hashtags. Ethan, in his typical fashion, had turned their marriage into a well-crafted brand. Olivia was now his trophy wife, the one who had taken my place. The one who, at least in Ethan's eyes, could make him feel powerful. I couldn't help but wonder if Olivia even realized what she had gotten herself into. She probably thought this was the beginning of some whirlwind adventure, a partnership that would open doors to everything she ever dreamed of. But I knew Ethan. I had spent years with him, navigating his egos and insecurities, managing his endless need for validation. I knew how he operated, how he was always looking for the next big thing, the next shiny object to distract him from the truth of his own shortcomings. Olivia had been his latest distraction, a temporary solution to his perpetual dissatisfaction. I shook my head, pushing the thought aside. It wasn't my problem anymore. I leaned back in my chair, the hum of my office's fluorescent lights, a soothing reminder of how far I had come. The next stage of my business was underway, and for the first time in my life, I didn't have to make excuses for my success. I didn't need to hide behind anyone else's vision of who I should be. The phone rang, snapping me back to the present. I grabbed it with a steady hand, ready to take on whatever challenge came my way. Sophia, it's Rachel. We've got a meeting scheduled with some of the top VCs this afternoon. They're interested in moving ahead with the international expansion. You're going to want to be there. I smiled to myself, feeling the adrenaline surge. The investors. The ones who had almost turned me down in the early stages. The ones who thought my idea was too risky, too niche. Now, they were clamoring to be part of my success. They saw what I had built, what I had created from nothing, and they wanted in. I stood up, smoothing down the fabric of my suit, the same suit I wore every time I had to step into a boardroom, confident and steady. The one that had come to symbolize the shift in who I had become, the woman who no longer hid in the shadows of her own insecurities. It was funny how quickly people forgot the quiet ones, how quickly they dismissed you when you weren't loud enough, or bold enough, or glamorous enough. But now, I had a seat at the table. The conference room was buzzing with conversation when I walked in, the investors seated at the long glass table, their eyes flickering over papers and documents, assessing, weighing, judging. But this time, they weren't just looking at numbers, they were looking at me. I took my place at the head of the table, meeting each of their gazes with a steady, unwavering confidence. "Thank you for making the time to meet today," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I know you've seen the projections and the current growth numbers, but I'm here today to show you something even more valuable than that, the next phase of this company's evolution." The room fell silent. I placed a sleek presentation folder in front of me, opening it to reveal slides detailing the international expansion. New markets, new technology partnerships, an entire roadmap that would position the company as a global leader in AI-driven market analysis. This was the moment I had worked for, the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and quiet persistence. As I spoke, I could feel the shift in the room. The investors, who had initially doubted my ability to scale, were now sitting on the edge of their seats. They saw the value in what I was offering. They saw the power behind my vision. When I finished my presentation, the room was quiet for a moment. One of the investors, a woman in her late 40s with sharp glasses and a no-nonsense demeanor, leaned forward. "This is impressive, Sophia. Really impressive. You've managed to accomplish what so many others can't. You've built a company that's not just profitable, but poised for long-term success. We're interested in moving forward with the next round of funding. Let's talk terms." I nodded, maintaining my composure, but inside I was grinning. This was it. The proof I had been seeking all along. It wasn't about Ethan. It wasn't about Olivia. It was about building something real, something that couldn't be taken away by betrayal, by lies, or by anyone who didn't believe in me. As we discussed the specifics of the deal, I couldn't help but think back to Ethan, to the way he had dismissed my ideas, my business, my potential, to the way he had let his own insecurities guide his decisions. He had never taken the time to understand my work, to truly see what I was capable of. Now, as I sat across from these powerful investors, I knew that my company would be worth more than anything he would ever achieve, because I had built it on my own terms. The meeting wrapped up a few hours later with a handshake and a signed agreement. As the investors left, Rachel and I exchanged a quiet glance. "This is huge, Sophia. You're about to change the game." I let the words sink in, savoring the moment. But there was no time to celebrate. There was still work to be done. The international expansion was just the beginning, and I had a long road ahead of me. But as I watched the investors exit, I realized something important. I had already won. Not just because of the deals, the contracts, or the numbers on paper. I had won because I had created something that mattered, something that would last. Weeks passed, and as the details of the international expansion began to take shape, I found myself entrenched in the work, the real work that would secure the company's place at the top. The team was growing rapidly, new offices were opening overseas, and the AI platform I had created was being integrated into industries I had only dreamed of breaking into. Every step, every decision, felt like a validation of everything I had fought for, everything I had sacrificed. But there was something more, something deeper than the success of the business itself. It was the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I had done it, without anyone's help, without Ethan, without anyone telling me how to think or what to believe. The validation I once sought from others now came from within me. It was a strange feeling, really, watching as the world slowly caught up to the work I had been quietly doing for years. And then seeing the people who had dismissed me, who had underestimated me, now scrambling to be part of the success they had thought was impossible. Ethan, for instance. The rumors had reached me through the grapevine, whispers of his failed real estate ventures, of his latest project going belly up, despite the promises of quick returns he had made to investors. It seemed the universe had a way of balancing things out. His schemes, fueled by greed and shortcuts, had finally caught up with him. I couldn't say I felt any particular satisfaction in it. In fact, I felt nothing at all. But I couldn't help but think back to that moment when I first saw the divorce papers on my desk. The moment he called me weak and left. He had assumed that the end of our marriage meant the end of my worth, that when he walked out, my ability to build anything of substance would disappear with him. He was wrong. Now, I had something far more valuable than anything he could ever dream of. A company worth millions, a team that was thriving, and a legacy that had been built on trust, innovation, and determination, things he would never truly understand. The phone buzzed on my desk, snapping me out of my thoughts. "Sophia, it's Rachel again. You need to see this." I picked up the phone, the words on the screen quickly catching my attention. Newsflash. Ethan Hawke's real estate empire is collapsing. Major investors pulling out after allegations of fraudulent schemes. Local authorities involved. I set the phone down, my mind briefly flashing to those years I spent beside him, making excuses for his failures, sweeping his mistakes under the rug, enabling his quest for quick riches, while I quietly built something solid and real. The collapse of his world didn't feel like revenge. It didn't even feel like justice. It was simply the consequence of living a life built on lies, a life where appearances mattered more than substance. A life that, in the end, couldn't hold up to the weight of its own contradictions. I looked at the headlines for a moment longer before turning my attention back to my own work. Ethan's story had ended, but mine was just beginning. Months later, I found myself sitting in front of a new set of investors in a sleek boardroom in London, my company's presence expanding in ways I had only hoped for. The transition from a small tech startup to a global player in AI had been swift, and I was now at the helm of a company that was valued at over $50 million. We had secured contracts with some of the largest multinational corporations in the world, providing insights and solutions that were shaping industries. It wasn't just the money, it was the impact. The sense that what I had created wasn't just valuable on paper, but was actually changing the way people did business, how companies approached data and artificial intelligence. My technology was being used to optimize healthcare, revolutionize energy solutions, and make financial markets smarter. In that moment, as I sat across from investors who looked at me with new respect I had earned and not begged for, I realized something important. It had never been about proving anything to anyone else. Not Ethan, not Olivia, not the world. It was about proving something to myself. The man I had once married had never understood the value of hard work and dedication. He had been obsessed with the idea of quick success, the fast track to wealth and power, a world where shortcuts were celebrated and integrity was optional. And Olivia? She was simply another person caught up in that illusion. She had believed the lies, thinking she could shortcut her way to the top, taking what she thought was his prize. But in the end, both of them were left standing in the ruins of their own choices. I was no longer the woman who stood quietly in the shadows, waiting for recognition. I had learned to stand in the light, confident and unyielding. I had built something that couldn't be stolen, something that didn't rely on deception or manipulation. The conference in London had gone incredibly well. Investors from around the world were eager to get on board. And as I sat there, discussing the future of my company, I realized I was in complete control. No longer an afterthought or a footnote in someone else's story. I had my own story now. When the meeting was done, and the final signatures were secured for the international expansion, Rachel and I walked out of the building together. The streets of London were bustling, full of life and energy, a world of opportunity. And I felt, for the first time in my life, that I truly belonged to it. But as I stepped into the car that would take me to my next meeting, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was an alert from a news outlet. Breaking: Ethan Hawke, arrested on charges of fraud and embezzlement. Authorities link his real estate schemes to major investor losses. The headline didn't shock me. If anything, it was inevitable. I leaned back in my seat, a small smile playing on my lips. It wasn't my victory. It wasn't about getting even. It was simply about moving forward. And that was the true power I had gained. I had built a future that was mine to define. The rest of the world, and the people who had once tried to tear me down, would simply have to catch up. A year later, I stood in front of a crowd of graduates at a prestigious tech conference, sharing my journey with them. As I spoke about the lessons I had learned, about the value of integrity, the importance of persistence, and the power of creating something real, I realized something profound. I wasn't the person I had once been. I was stronger, wiser, and more certain of who I was than I had ever been. And in that moment, I knew that my true success wasn't measured in the millions I had earned or the accolades I had received. It was measured in the lives I had touched, the businesses I had transformed, and the legacy I was creating. As I walked off the stage, a young woman approached me, clutching her diploma. "I read about what happened with your ex-husband and Olivia," she said. "It must feel satisfying to see them face the consequences." I paused, thinking for a moment before I spoke. "Actually," I said with a smile, "I'm too busy building something real to worry about their downfall. They chose their path, just as I chose mine." And with that, I walked away, leaving the past behind and stepping confidently into the future. As I stood at the precipice of everything I had built, I realized the greatest lesson of all. True success isn't about proving others wrong or seeking revenge. It's about creating something real, something that stands the test of time. My journey wasn't defined by my past or the people who doubted me, but by my resilience, my integrity, and the courage to keep moving forward. In the end, it wasn't the wealth or recognition that mattered most. It was knowing that I built a legacy that could never be taken away. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your journey, too, is waiting to be written.